Hi, my name is Yishis, and I play a thief on the Blackgate server. Today I'm bringing you the fourth installment of my Outnumbered thief fights that I've had in the past several weeks. For this first fight, I take on 4 Kaineng. I open initially by taking falling damage in order to trigger Blinding Powder on falling. I now open on a thief as I deem him the greatest threat. Soon after, another thief steals to me, so I evade away and use the stealth that I stole from the first thief. There's now another thief that has immobilized me, so I have 2 warriors and 2 thieves on me. I re-stealth and notice the first thief dagger storming, so I decide to open on him as you can get good melee damage in when they're dagger storming. I take a bit too much aggression, so I shadow step away and move back in to hit the first thief as he's moving too far away from his teammates. I manage to get him down and shadow step back in order to re-stealth, and then put good damage pressure into the enemies as they try to revive. I managed to get down the second thief, and then move to re-engage the first thief in order to get him down as well, and my plan is to stomp him while the enemies are busy trying to revive the second thief that was downed. I managed to get a stomp off and steal just to ensure that I'm in range and also gain a stealth. I get the second thief back down and I'm able to fully damage her down, and then decide to dagger storm as I knew I could get good damage in and also cripple them. I stealth back up and have a Tarnished Coast thief on the right open on me while I'm trying to take these enemies out. So I have to play a bit more cautiously, but I do manage to get the other warrior down and get the stomp off, while the other warrior continues to try to revive. The Tarnished Coast thief is now going to continue to put pressure on me, which makes taking out the rest of these enemies a bit more difficult, so I Heartseeker in order to get him to refuge. I now continue to put pressure on the warrior, but I take a lot of bleed stacks from the warrior and get immobilized by him. However, my regeneration in stealth is enough to offset the bleeds. Stealth up again, and decide I need to put more pressure on the Tarnished Coast thief in order to get him off me. I quickly use the ability I stole from the warrior to reflect the thief's opener as I expected him to continue to stack bleeds. I now am able to get enough damage into the remaining Kaineng warrior, and there are now 2 Tarnished Coast enemies attacking me while I try to down this player, so I shadow refuge in order to get the stealth off. For the rest of this fight, I end up just kiting the Tarnished Coast players back across the map and having about a 10-minute duel with the thief. It ended up being not very interesting, so I am going to just cut the clip here and move on. The next clip is from Tier 1. I open on an Elementalist trying to revive a player I just killed. It's good to use dead enemy players as bait if they stick around. I get a very quick drop on this Elementalist as he was rather squishy, get a stealth, and decide to leave him in down form and open on the ranger that has now engaged me. I also have a thief that engages me with a pistol from behind. I do get the ranger down and manage to get a stomp off. While doing this, I'm observing the Elementalist and making sure that he still has a small health pool and isn't able to revive himself. I move over and successfully get him down. A Mesmer has now engaged as well, so I stealth up and get good damage into him. I stealth one more time and notice a Jade Quarry group engaging. So I decide to push all the way through to the back of that group as I expect them to engage Sanctum of Rall, and so I know I can take out enemies in the back of their group. I get good damage into a warrior and end up getting stunned by another warrior, so I have to shadow step away. That warrior now goes for a kill shot, and I have no choice but to shadow refuge and take it, and then shadow step away in order to revive in stealth. I heal back up and decide that I'm going to re-engage on that warrior. I Heartseeker up to him and get a nice backstab into him. I make sure to cripple him and then Bladestorm immediately as I expect him to continue to shoot with his rifle. He attempts a kill shot and realizes I'm reflecting, so changes to his axe. I evade away and move back in to get quick burst and drop him down. I successfully get the stomp on him and steal from the second warrior in order to spin against him and do a lot of damage and knock him down as well. Next, I take on 2 engineers, as I don't get to fight them very often in World v World. They don't appear to be quite as popular. This engineer is running a conditioned pistol build spec. I get confused by her crowbar here from the toolkit weapon set, so I end up having to stealth away and avoid attacking as the 5 confusion stacks would have quickly dispatched of me. She now tries to blind and confuse from her pistol, but I use the tree to avoid that, stealth back up, and move in for another stealth. I'm looking for a good opening here without getting crowd controlled or stacked with conditions from this engineer. I get some good damage into her, drop the puddle that I stole from her, and use Death Blossom in order to get my own confusion stacks on her. However, I end up getting hit by her big old bomb as I did not move out fast enough. A second engineer has now engaged, so I re-stealth and quickly get a backstab into the first engineer before the second one can react. I manage to get the stomp off and go immediately very aggressive on the second engineer. I get a good backstab in, he tries to evade away, so I shadow step up, stealth, and get another backstab, followed by a Heartseeker, successfully playing a very aggressive attack to the point that he was not able to respond in time, and I'm able to get the stomp off successfully. Next I take on a Guardian and Warrior, having already killed one up-leveled player. My goal here is to drop the Warrior very quickly, as I know I can get good damage into him because he's up-leveled. I watch out for the Guardian's ring, stealth up, and move in for a backstab on the Char Warrior. I then use the spin ability that I stole from the Warrior in order to put heavy pressure into both enemies. I now shadow step back to break out of the fear and finalize damage on the Warrior. Instead of going fully aggressive on the Warrior, I use 2 Cloak and Daggers in order to get the enemy down while remaining in stealth so that the Guardian doesn't have a chance to get additional stuns on me. I now stealth up, and it's a game of just staying more mobile than the Guardian. He rings me in, so I make sure to just stealth as he moves in with his hammer. A Ranger now engages as well, and they'll try to revive the enemies that I've killed. I stealth and heal in order to clear the conditions that the Ranger has put on me. An Elementalist revives as well, so we're looking at a Guardian, Elementalist, and Ranger. I have to move back and avoid the group a little bit as they're dropping too much AoE. I stealth up and get damage into the Ranger as my next target, as they're generally the easier target out of this group. I get a nice backstab into him, get him down. However, I miss the timing on my Cloak and Dagger and take a daze from the Ranger, so I'm forced to heal in order to stealth, but I do then manage to get a stomp off while the enemies are attempting to get me down. I then Shadow Refuge as I took a lot of damage while completing that stomp. I pull back as I don't have any useful utilities at the moment and wanted to wait for my heal to return. I move back in with the enemies attempting to find me and re-stealth on an up-leveled warrior. I now see that 2 up-level warriors are in this fight, and so they will be my first targets for damage. I use Dagger Storm in order to reflect the rifle abilities, and then Shadow Step as I got immobilized by the Ranger's Binding Roots, so I wanted to break out of it and confuse the enemies on my positioning, and then continue to put pressure on one of the rifle warriors. I move in but take traps from the Ranger, and so I'm forced to re-stealth and play very carefully here as the enemies do know that I'm around and they're swinging quite often. I get a nice backstab into one of the warriors and decide to go for the stomp. This is a little dangerous as if they'd done enough damage, I would have been in trouble. Luckily, I took the gamble and didn't take too much damage, so I got them down. I take a stun from the hammer, so I re-stealth and reposition, and then use the stolen ability from the warrior in order to do good AoE damage again. I take a Fear Me from the warrior, but do manage to get the warrior down and get a successful stomp. The remaining enemy ends up running and being finished off by others. Next I take on a Glass Warrior with 25 Bloodlust stacks and a Confusion Mesmer. I stealth on the warrior, open on him, and immediately use the stolen ability to put heavy damage into both enemies. I take a lot of damage and my low health stealth triggers. I decide to put further aggression into the warrior and get him down, and then quickly refuge and escape out of the Mesmer's puddle in order to avoid taking too much damage, then go in and get a successful stomp on the warrior. The Mesmer was slightly too late on his pull and didn't manage to interrupt. I get good damage into the Mesmer, but I take a lot of confusion stacks and the damage becomes very strong, so I have to pull out and avoid any further actions until some of the confusion stacks fall off. If I'd continued to attack with those stacks, I probably would have killed myself. I get him down, but again am up to 6 confusion stacks, so I have to turn and wait, avoiding any further action. With less stacks on me, I can complete the stomp. Next up, I take on 3 level 80 enemies in the same guild, an Elementalist, Mesmer, and Necromancer. Of the classes, the Mesmer is generally the squishiest and easiest to take down, so I immediately move in to engage on her. I get a stealth, and open with a backstab, doing a lot of damage, and actually managing to fully get her down. However, I take a knockdown from the Elementalist and have to re-stealth, and the Elementalist is able to fully revive the Mesmer. I move back in, and decide to again take out the Mesmer, making sure to get her down before engaging the other enemies. She drops again, and this time I'm able to get a stomp, having it go off after her stealth finishes. I take another knockdown from the Elementalist and am forced to re-stealth and move back as I don't want to take too many conditions from both of these very condition-heavy classes. I have some good damage into the Necromancer, stealth, and get a good backstab into him. I steal from him and use the fear against him in order to lock him down and get good damage into him and do successfully get him down. I stealth up and go for a stomp, deciding to take the damage from the Elementalist and getting the stomp off successfully. I refuge as I've taken a lot of damage from the Elementalist, but do have the Necromancer down. Next, I enter into a fun duel with this Elementalist. He ends up being fairly well played, and I've gotten a lot of requests from people on strategies for fighting tanky Dagger Elementalists, so hopefully this serves as a good example. The trick to these fights is being patient, moving in for burst when you have the opportunity, but not being afraid to back off and kite the enemy as needed. You'll notice both the enemy Elementalist and I do this. As you see right there, he kites away as he'd taken a bit too much damage, then moves in for his own burst. I shadow step away, play it carefully. He then misforms knowing that it's going to be my turn to burst. I move in, again, get some burst into him, but I get chilled, so I shadow step away. I move in, put additional damage in, take a stun from his electrical armor, and we then move into, again, kiting each other back and forth. I get a nice backstab in, get some more damage, and this time decide to Blade Storm in order to cripple him and keep him in range a little longer. He teleports away, and I continue to Blade Storm. I try to re-stealth on him, he evades away. I try to re-stealth on his elite pet, that also evades, so now I'm low on initiative. Luckily, he's kiting away at the moment. He moves in for burst, and I evade away from it and then re-stealth on him. Again, I'm going to attempt to move in for damage. I shadow step into him to go aggressively. Try to get good damage and fail, so I shadow step back again, playing it patiently and looking for another good opportunity. I move in for another backstab. He gets a knockdown on me and gets some good burst in. So immediately, when you take a burst like that, you have to realize that you're going to have to pull back and play cautiously again. I refuge, move in, but again, get good damage, and as you notice, I am speeding up the fights in these points where he and I are kiting back and forth, just to keep it engaging. Again, though, just making sure that you stay patient. I saw that he was using his knockdown ability there and made sure to evade. I get really good damage in and have him on the run at this point. However, he has very good kiting abilities, and I again get chilled, so I'm forced to switch to the short bow. I attempt to shadow step up with the short bow ability, then steal to him, but don't get enough damage in. He's already able to fully heal in his water form. So I re-stealth and move in again. I take a knockdown from him. He moves in again with strong burst, so I have to back up and heal. This time I'm going to move in yet again. I miss my stealth, but manage to get a second one off. Now there's a Doliac coming in, and I can use that to my advantage in order to get a stealth if I can't get one close enough to the Elementalist. I stealth in again, get a nice backstab, immediately Heartseeker, and slowing it down here. I do get him down. As you can see, the damage is from me before my teammate came in, and I'm able to now complete the stomp. The key to success was being patient and waiting for an opening to burst. Next, I take on 4 Jade Quarry individuals that had all ganged up after I'd taken them out individually. I stealth on the Engineer, but expect him to be a bit too tanky, so I instead switch and get a nice backstab into the Elementalist. I try to stealth, but she evades and I miss it, so I instead Blade Storm in order to reflect the Engineer's pistol abilities. He unloads a lot of his major condition abilities into the Blade Storm and have them all reflected at him. With the Engineer now eating his own conditions, I'm safe to engage further on the Elementalist, getting good damage into her. I Heartseeker in and get her down, and then refuge. Attempting to go for a stomp, knowing she'll mist form, I wait for that to complete, and complete the stomp. The Engineer moves in to try and perform a shield knockback, but is slightly too late. I get a backstab into the Engineer, drop the puddle I stole from him, and use Death Blossom to again stack conditions. I attempt to stealth and fail, and then get pulled by a Mesmer that enters the fight. So I stealth back up and reposition a bit. At this point, I get another good backstab into the Engineer, evade through his condition field, and re-stealth again. Have the Engineer very low, so I'm going to move in and try to fully take him out. I get a Heartseeker into him to knock him down completely, stealth, and manage to get a successful stomp on the Engineer. At this point, I'm going to switch and engage on the Mesmer. However, she's running through a Veil field to keep herself stealthed, so I use her clones in order to re-stealth myself. I don't want to open on any of these. I want to make sure I end up having the opening hand. Now, with their stealths down, I move in and get a nice backstab into the Mesmer as she thinks she's safe to revive. I get good damage in, Heartseeker, and I'm able to complete the stomp. The final Mesmer now moves in, tries to use his Greatsword knockback, but doesn't quite reach me. I get a very good backstab and then Heartseeker to fully finish him off, and then get a successful stomp on that Mesmer. I'm now going to switch over and show my spec and gear, and also want to thank everybody for their support, and I really enjoy how well received my videos have been. So, while showing my spec, I'm going to engage the tail end of this Zerg and take out some enemies, just for the fun of it. My spec is 30 critical strikes, 30 shadow arts, and 10 into acrobatics, really focusing on being a skirmishing backstab type of thief. I don't want to be the type of thief that just focuses on backstab and run away, or the kind of one-shot kill mug thief. This is much more of a open, get good damage, but stay in the fight and really skirmish, as I've hopefully shown in my videos. My gear is now being shown on the left side of the screen. As you can see, I have a high focus on damage, but I still make sure to maintain some vitality and toughness, as in addition to being very mobile and stealthy, this allows for still very good survivability and great fights like you've just seen. Thanks as always for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed.